Yes.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
We've had a couple of great conversations, and I'd love for one of the themes that you and I really that rose to the top from our conversations and our email exchanges is, as we thought about freedom and what you were going to share, I really locked into the freedom to tell a different story, freedom from limitations, freedom from expectations. If you've been to other events, this is not as casual as I am, but I'm really trying to pull it out here, okay? So, Stephanie, will you tell me a little bit about how you interpret free and what you're feeling like you have freedom from these days?
Yeah, so I could probably go on a tangent on any of those iterations of freedom that you just ran through. And thinking about having this conversation today, I have realized how core the idea of freedom is to me as a person. And looking back at just how I've been my entire life, I feel like I'm probably the most free that I've ever been in my entire life. I'm 40 years old, so it's never too late. I still feel like I'm getting there and still am on that journey, but I would say that the revolution inside of me probably began to happen when I started my company. And I will disclaimer myself right now that I'm an emotional person anyways, but I'm on a level 11 in terms of rawness right now because of some things going on with my mom. So I'm probably gonna cry. I hope I don't make anyone uncomfortable.
We don't care if we make you uncomfortable if she cries.
Oh, actually, you're right. I don't care, but I'm just letting you know. But yeah, so to me, freedom, and in this journey that I've been in the past few years, is about is also very closely connected with authenticity, and that you are truly free when you are living your truth and being your most authentic self. And using your voice. For me, it matters to be using my voice in a way that I feel is helping other people. So your manifesto here that y'all read, I'm already oh my God, I'm totally gonna cry myself through this whole thing. But I strongly believe, and I have a lot of admiration and appreciation for people who are creative and use it for the power of good, because I don't think that it always is. And I think it's just being a creative is a hard life anyways, but then using it for the power of good, I feel is even more difficult. I feel like it's getting easier, or not easy, I think it's becoming less difficult now with that demand for more justice in the world, I guess. But all of that to say that I think that that's really what freedom to me is about living that journey. And what I found in my own is that there are so many kind of scripts that we're living in. And when I was kind of going through my own journey of starting my company, and for so long never have believing in myself enough or feeling like I would be able to do something like that, to start my own company, that I was supposed to graduate from high school, go to college, graduate, get a job, get married. I was on this script, and my parents never really, they weren't the ones that were really directing that, but there's something ingrained in you, and maybe the messaging in society or whatever, that these are the scripts you follow, and if you don't, then there's something wrong with you. And I think that by listening to the voice in my head that said, I worked in municipal water utilities for 10 years before I started my company. So I don't know how much y'all know about me, but I have my own marketing company, but I only work in the water space, which always raises a lot of questions because people are like, well, what the hell does that mean? So water utilities, companies that make water technology, universities doing work in water space, nonprofits doing work in the space. There's actually a lot of things going on in the space, and we stay in that sector because we did it for 10 years, and that's our story and what we know. But I was working in government and municipal government, and just like anywhere else where you're representing a big organization, you can't always say what needs to be said. And there's a lot of issues going on in the sector, and I don't think that the way that they've been doing it for 100 years is the way that's going to help address some of those challenges. But you can't say that when you're, especially from my role, because communicators in the water world were like the bottom of the bucket. Like they're worried about treating water and, distributing it to people and not killing anyone, which thank God that's what their focus is. But, I wasn't in a position of power to really speak that. And I felt like I needed to get out and use my voice to use it in the way for good that I wanted to, and to bring attention to the things that I felt like needed to change. And that's my going rogue story, hence Rogue Water, which is the name of my company.
Nice.
So.
One of the themes that we were in conversation with that really pinged me was when you talk about, because Stephanie also has a podcast that if you haven't listened to, visit the page and link to it.
It's not just about water, I promise.
It's really interesting. Is the role of creativity and resilience.
Yes. So I have Rogue Water is a company. Rogue Water Lab is our nonprofit that was a kind of a spinoff of that. And through the nonprofit, we have an event every year called Catalyst. And it is for educators and communicators in our sector from any place, whatever that means, whether you're an engineer who communicates or whatever, I don't care. If you're into it, then please come. And obviously for the past 2 years, we had to go virtual. But when we did it, we were like, we don't want to go virtual and this is just a Zoom thing. And because our event is really about connection and community and all of those things. And so we worked really hard in continue to make it a meaningful event is my point in all of that. But so when we were looking at last year's, this was the second year of the pandemic, of people being, going through all of this together. And we were seeing just how wrecked everyone was on a personal level. And we didn't hear anyone in our sector really addressing that and really giving people a space to talk about how wrecked they were, because there's not a bold line there. It's very fluid between what your personal life brings into your professional life. I don't care how hard you try to mask it, you can't completely draw a straight line there. And so our event is normally focused on what we call the ABCs of comms, which is assessment, branding, content, strategy. And what we did for that year is we turned it all inward. And instead of looking at what we put out in the world, we looked at okay, how can we assess our own personal health right now? How can we, personal branding, everything was turned inward. And so one of the topics that I was really passionate about and wanted to really talk about was creative resilience. And so I did a lot of research about how creativity is actually a tool that a lot of people have forgotten to actually take the time and invest in to help yourself be more resilient. Because the more that you give your brain and body and mind a place for it to express itself and to get out what's in there, and to think bigger and further outside of just the situation that you're in, the more likely you are to get through extremely difficult times, the better your mental health is. And there's actual scientific research out there that supports all of that. But the whole conversation was just about making space for that and not seeing it as, I have so much to do on this to-do list, I don't have time to write. Or I don't have time to just go sit outside or take a walk and let my brain just be. And I think that we were already such busy people. Americans were such a busy country. And I feel like in the beginning when COVID happened, we all kind of slammed on our brakes and stopped for a minute. But then we were like, what are we doing? Why aren't we working? Why aren't we working? And now it's that's just been, I don't know how we could be busier than we were before, but I feel like we are. And there's no delineation between work and rest. And so I think that giving yourself that space to be creative is is not just that's what I do, that's my work, that's how that's what I do for a living. It's actually a key piece of your mental health and resiliency.
Based on your experience and your research and your conversations through that series, what are some practices that we could do that are simple, like one, to create that space?
Oh boy. Let me get my notes. Yeah, because let me think of one that, this one you all have probably heard, but this is something that has worked for me. And unfortunately, with everything that's been going on, I haven't been sticking to this as well as I used to, but just blocking out a space of time in your day, and everyone's time of day where they feel the most creative is different. So some people are night owls and it's in the nighttime. For me, it's early morning. I wake up at 5 a.m. every morning. I used to wake up at 4. And the rest of the world is sleeping and quiet, and thank God, because that's my time. No one's asking me for shit. And so I love it. But everyone knows their time, and don't just put it on your calendar. You have to make a commitment to yourself that is your time to be creative. And according to a research done by Microsoft, it takes 2 hours. You need a 2-hour minimum chunk, because it takes our brains now, because of cell phones and social media and just like pew, 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 our brains going everywhere. It takes that 2-hour time frame to actually get that sustained focus. So mine is from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. every morning. It's on my calendar. I communicated that to my entire team. This is my grind time. This is what I'm doing. Unless a client absolutely needs something during this time, I'll allow it, but for the most part But actually the biggest person that I had to remind that was myself, because it would be like 10 a.m. and you'd be up to my elbows in emails, and I was like, well, I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing right now. So the biggest piece is making that commitment to yourself and blocking out the time. But yeah, it's 2 hours. So, and it doesn't have to be in the middle of the day like mine is. It's when your most creative peak time is.
And what you just mentioned about not doing what you're supposed to be doing, one of the lines of conversation that we had that really resonated with me is how we're not as self-compassionate when to ourselves. So do you want to share a little bit about that and your journey?
Yes. Giving, especially now with just the stress and pressures and understanding where we're at in the world right now, is just giving ourselves, well, exactly like you're free to fail and have fun doing it. And it's not always it's giving yourself that grace to know that you're not going to get it perfect every single day. This sounds like it's coming so easily out of my mouth, but this is so difficult for me because I am a recovering perfectionist. And saying that is there's 2 conversations happening in my head right now. I'm saying that, and the other side of me is what the hell are you saying? You have to do it like this. I'm the type where I'm going to get back in the gym, and it's not go for 20 minutes and then build up from there. It's no, I'm going to go for an hour and a half. I'm going to do this hardcore workout that I found online. I'm going to do this super stringent eating plan, and then I wonder why it lasts for a week, and then I'm out. But yes, giving yourself grace is so important, and just starting where you can start, and being giving yourself that grace when you can't do it exactly perfect for a certain day. So I have this new morning ritual that I started several months ago now, and it seems like a really long list of things that I do every morning. But the second to last recent time that my mom was in the hospital, I had been at the hospital until 6 o'clock in the morning, and I needed to be back there at 9 for when the doctors started making their rounds. And I got up and I was well, I don't have time to do my morning ritual, because I normally take my time through it. And my brain was I don't know if there's cussing. I'm not gonna say what I said to myself, but I was
we can edit it out.
But my brain was bitch, get your ass up and do this. I don't care if you only have 30 minutes. And I was like, okay. So I got up and I did my whole thing because in my mind I was like, well, if I don't do yoga for 15 minutes, then it doesn't count. And you were like, do it for 5, just do it. And so I did. I did a very condensed version of my morning ritual in 30 minutes. And when I was done, I was like, holy shit, I feel so like I started my day out. I started a day that was going to be totally shitty, but I started it good because I did that for myself. And so you just give yourself grace and sometimes just pull yourself up and say, just do what you can do.
Do what you can do. Michael, will you go to the next slide, please? And just because you're on the line of research and I'm a total fact finder nerd, it is research-based that to start a new thing, you start at the very smallest with the least resistance. So turtle steps. I'm going to totally support you on that. One other conversation line that we had that I think will resonate with everyone, especially in the context of where we are right now, me, is the burnout and recovering from burnout. And so you've had an experience recently with that. Will you share a little bit about that with us?
I'm like, which one? Which experience of burnout?
And just recovering from it, recognizing it, like I feel like many of us are in the middle of it, and we're still trying to walk through the mud of previous expectations of what we were able to do versus where we are in this moment. So what have you learned from your experiences that you could share with us?
I think the most important, well, first of all, there's an amazing book. It was written by a woman, actually a pair of women, for women, but it's definitely a book that dudes can get plenty from. Like, so don't feel like you're excluded. There's something in there for you too, but it's called Burnout. And it's by Emily and her sister Nagoski. I can't remember her name, Amelia Nagoski. It's a great book. And, but one of the things that I learned in that book, and one of the most important things that I've learned in all of my research and studies, is about like emotions, and how she described emotions as being tunnels. And that what happens for a lot of us is that we have an emotion and then we don't allow ourselves to feel it, which is why feel is on here, and then it gets stuck. And then that just sits in us and festers and manifests into even worse things. And the whole kind of burnout and dealing with burnout comes from processing and like letting that emotion out. And her book, actually, this book has a ton of different ways to process that and move through the tunnel. But it was the first time that I had ever really thought about emotions in that way. We also talked about the body keeps the score, and that's another one. But just, especially for men, I think understanding that you have feelings, it's okay that you have feelings or emotions about shit, and you need to like process it and get it out. And for women, the same thing of like, I think women are more in tune with their emotions, but less, I feel like sometimes we're more likely to get stuck in there because we're always taking care of 100 other people and things and stuff like that. And we're like, oh, I don't have time to process that right now. But learning about emotions, learning how our mind and body holds on to them, manifests them, and things like that, and learning the ways that you can release those and move through that tunnel and get on with your life has probably been one of the most important lessons that I have learned. And it's a practice. I'm not an expert by any means. I still get stuck. But understanding that it is a practice and that when you do mess up, you can always start again.
Perfect. And one I'd like for you to share is because of the pandemic, how do you think that shifted us as creative leaders and in the leadership that we offer in our own practices or with our own gifts?
Yeah. I think that as creative leaders and understanding things like story, emotion, influence, the power of words and story, we understand that better than non-creatives. I actually believe that everybody is creative in some way. You know, I don't. Yeah. but people who don't like see it as on their forefront of who they are as a person in that. Because I work with a bunch of engineers and I know they're creative, but damn, it's hard to get them there sometimes, you know? Whew. But I love them. I love you all. I don't mean any digs. But like, I think that we are in a place where we need to own our power. We need to step into our power as creative leaders, because we are the ones who remind the world of its humanity. And I feel like more than anything else, we have forgotten that we are human beings. We are not a world of robots, but we have somehow become one. And I see that in the work that I do sometimes, and the gaps in communication that happen between the system and the people it serves. And I've seen that a lot in the healthcare system I get it, you're overwhelmed. And you kind of do have to feel like you have to remove yourself a little bit. But I feel like people who do have that creative spirit, that creative heart, please step into your power and be the beacon that reminds the world of its humanity.
Beautiful. And one final question for you before I take questions from the audience. On that thread of story, how do we free ourselves from an old story? What has your experience been around that?
Therapy. Therapy, courage, vulnerability. Brene Brown, God.
My BFF.
Yes. If you don't know her, look her up. Yeah, changing your story, like, and having friends and family, like having a community around you that can help you through that journey too. It is not easy to break the script. It is not easy to walk your own path, but life is short, so fucking do it. Like, just do it, and it's scary, and it's okay to be scared, but just do it. Like Nike.